Welcome back, folks. All you brand new folks, all you old folks, all you regulars, all you old timers, all the new timers, and everyone who has been listening and watching the podcast the last few weeks. We appreciate you guys. It's swelling. This thing is swelling on us. And I got new listeners, new submitters of questions, new debate topics. And I think the podcast is expanding here with the range of topics because we got everything for you today on My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. I am Brandon Reed. And Dan Schalk, he is our editor-in-chief, president, CEO, COO, and commissioner of our fantasy football league. He's Dan Schalk. What up, Dan?
It's hello. I'll start with that, I guess. I mean,
it's been a crazy week.
Yeah, the podcast listeners right now don't know what's been happening this week, and I guess I failed in my commissioner duties. I don't know. Let's move on. That's for the end of the show when our man Orlando joins us. He can weigh in on that. But it's been a rough couple days. Let's just say that.
And Dan hasn't got any sleep. The other owners in the league are threatening to sue him. But okay, so we had a trade scenario. Yours truly was involved in a trade scenario with Ryan Thomas of Thomas Take and the Thomas Take podcast. And the trade was vetoed in the league. There's a question of not whether or not the trade was fair or not. We're going to let you guys decide that and weigh in too. Can't wait to see your responses next week on this, but we are going to save that debate a little bit later for the end of the show. Definitely want Orlando's take on this too, so we'll wait till he is here to really debate that. But I'm sure all you guys have been in that same situation before in your leagues. I don't know how strict your commissionerships are or how they work. I've been commissioner of several leagues too. It's not an easy job because you're never going to please everyone, but I was proposed to trade what I thought was a pretty fair trade, and other folks thought it was weighed in my favor, and a couple of folks vetoed it, so it didn't happen. So it caused a huge debate whether or not, and you guys can probably have your own opinions and send us feedback on this too. So it kind of weighs a debate. How should trades be vetoed if they should be able to be vetoed, by meaning whether it be strictly the commissioner, one person, or be open for a debate, which is what we had in our league with several other owners having to veto power and having to get so many vetoes. Just how should it be? How should it work? Because this is kind of controversial. It's kind of controversial. So I know Nick Pertins is watching. Nick and Judy are always asking about our fantasy leagues. So there you go, Nick. You'll want to tune in to the end of this show and hear this debate and hear the scenario and see exactly what happened, because it caused quite a stir yesterday. And several of the folks involved are not going to be on the podcast today, but Orlando is. And it caused quite a stir, for sure, for our commissioner, Dan Schalk. And I'm not even necessarily going to place the blame on you, Dan. It wasn't you solely, but I think it maybe was payback. You said I let kind of the guys take over the podcast, and I lost complete control a few podcasts ago when you were out on vacation. So I think you got a little bit of payback yesterday. I think you let some of the owners kind of run over you, and you lost complete control. But we'll get to it. But a whole lot of stuff to talk about today. I mentioned the big rundown: NBA, NFL, mailbag questions in both of those leagues. We got college football talk. We've got college basketball talk. And we got MLB news breaking right now as the podcast is live, Dan.
Yeah. The Cy Youngs are being announced. I saw Corey Kluber won it for the American League. I don't know if I've seen the National League yet.
Max Scherzer.
That was kind of to be expected with Clayton Kershaw missing most of the summer months with injury. So two well-deserving candidates. I think in the American League specifically, Kluber was strong, but there wasn't that one dominant pitcher consistently. Chris Sale was it for most of the year, and he fell off towards the end of the season. So I'm good with both of the awards, and the one that I'm keeping an eye on the most is obviously AL MVP. Jose Altuve better get it, because if Aaron Judge does, it's a New York East Coast bias thing.
Well, don't you think winning the World Series? That's the thing about the MLB. Now the NBA is like that too, but the MLB awards are handed out so long after the complete postseason.
Yeah, well, I mean, they just announce them that way. The votes have to be in before the regular season ends. So I mean, that's what I'm worried about. Is I think if it was actually voted after the postseason, obviously they'd hands down give it to Altuve. But from what I've heard just on talk shows and listening to the insiders talk, I think Altuve is going to win it. But Judge had a pretty solid season, as you know. So I'm a little worried that New York Yankees thing, being 6'8" and a huge.
Yeah, I don't quite think so. Altuve, I'll admit, Altuve was steady. He was killer the whole season long.
Yep,
and
he was. You're right.
And Judge did slump. I think he's maybe the future. To me, he reminds me so much of Mark McGwire. I think he's an exciting player, but Altuve does it all, and he's 5'2".
Yeah, no, I mean Altuve to me is definitely deserving. I thought he should have won last year, and he came in third. So, it's his year. He deserves the award. So we're going to be finding out soon.
So a whole lot to get into there. We'll get into a little bit more baseball talk and also news today. Arkansas fired their athletic director, Dan. It's been huge news where I am, as if you can imagine. That's all I've heard about today, but it kind of got me thinking about just the SEC coaching carousel that's going to go down. You folks may not even know all this is going down. The SEC is going to have a big coaching carousel change here soon. And we'll talk about that for a minute. Teddy Bridgewater is back. We'll talk about him over Case Keenum, which one you want there. We'll talk about the benching of Tyrod Taylor. Was that a shock to you, Dan? Did that kind of come out of nowhere where, say, halfway through the season, a little over, and then just bam?
Well, I mean, listening to the national media today, because it's a story on SportsCenter and different talk shows, you would think it would be a surprise, but the fans here in Buffalo, I would say it's been a 50-50 split, but half of them have been wanting Tyrod benched, since week one. I mean, they didn't even want him to start the year. So, a lot of the national media has brought up his numbers and his stats of where he ranks in franchise history. But if you actually watch Bills games, which they obviously do not, if you actually watch the Bills games themselves, you would be able to fairly clearly see that Tyrod Taylor is not a franchise quarterback. He's not one that you can rely on to win you games, even with a running game and defense. So So
are you saying they should be a lot better at a quarterback than you may be looking at second best team in the AFC?
Well, I mean, if you put Carson Wentz on the Bills, they're in first place in the AFC.
If you put Carson Wentz on a lot of teams, that I feel about Carson Wentz. I truly believe he is the next best quarterback. Not because of the numbers or the record of Philadelphia. Record regardless, it's the way. What it is after he steps up to the huddle, he is a signal caller. He is a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type. He has that confidence and swagger and gets it done after the huddle breaks. And that's why I think he's the future.
Yeah, and you know what, Brandon? I bet you learned that in our NFL draft profiles that we had on the site leading up to draft time, because he was our number one quarterback in that class as opposed to Jared Goff. So I'm sure that's where you got it from.
Oh, that would have been all you, Dan. You're the scout, but I'm sure that's how I felt at the time. And Jared Goff has surprised me. We have a Jared Goff question coming up on the mailbag today. So appreciate all the mailbag questions, but all that stuff. UCLA players are back in the U.S. thanks to Donald Trump. I heard he had made a little phone call. Those players are back. So, and then the start to college basketball. If you have not checked out the site in a few days, guys, I don't know what Dan's doing. I guess Dan has not been to work at all in days, because he is writing, I think, every single game preview and prediction piece on every single game. So you got to check out the site. College basketball is in full effect now, and it's exciting. It's exciting, and we have kind of a way too early college basketball question on today's show as well, but we'll answer that. But that, college mailbag questions, NBA mailbag questions, NFL mailbag questions. We'll get to the big debate a little bit later on the show of why my fantasy football trade was denied and where do we go from here, and was it fair or not, and then we ask for your feedback. You tell us. It's going to be hot. It's going to be a hot take, and that's it. Then we'll probably get out of here, but Orlando will be here shortly. I am Brandon Reed. That is Dan Shaw. So the first thing I just want to talk about, we'll stick with baseball, Dan. This is your wheelhouse here. So I didn't even know this until this morning. I didn't know that Derek Jeter was affiliated with the Miami Marlins, but he is CEO. And there is also heard that there was talk that I don't know how this really came up. Maybe it was via Giancarlo Stanton's agent, but he came out and said that he will not go to the Red Sox and not go to the Cardinals. And I thought that was a weird mix to mention those two specifically, but then Derek Jeter weighs in a little bit later this afternoon and says, whoa, 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 there's nothing saying that Giancarlo Stanton will not be Miami Marlin. So Derek Jeter wants him to stay in Miami and says it's a good chance that he'll convince him to stay in Miami, I guess. So Dan, I just wanted to get your take on that, all that stuff going on with all that news breaking.
Yeah, I mean, you were the one who told me about the report where Giancarlo didn't want to go to the Red Sox or the Cardinals, which surprised me because if anybody has been following the Stanton rumors, you know that the Cardinals were supposedly the favorite when this all started to land, the slugger. So that was a little surprising to hear that. When it comes to Jeter kind of, saying that he would accept Stanton and not trade him, I think a lot of that is just pleasing the public or mentioning that in case they can't trade him. I think ultimately his goal is to trade Stanton. They said when the offseason began that the Marlins want to get payroll to around $90 million. You can't do that with Stanton's sizable contract and actually field the baseball team. So I think you're going to see the Marlins be pretty big sellers in the offseason here, not just Stanton, but D. Gordon, Martin Prado. You're going to see a number of players leave that team. So I think Jeter's just kind of saving face a little bit just in case something doesn't happen. But I do expect him to be moved.
So I'm going to ask you a question here, Dan. And I should be more prepared to answer this than you, but you're definitely the big baseball guy. So if the Cardinals are trying to clear that much space, cap space, and salary space to add a piece like a Giancarlo Stanton, as you just mentioned, that they were reported one of the favorites, what do they do next?
That's going to be interesting. I mean, there's some bats, available in the free agent market. They did just sign Dexter Fowler in the offseason last year to kind of man their center field. So he had an injury-plagued season, so they expect to have him back, fully healthy. They have a lot of young players that they haven't really been sold on. So maybe they expect them to kind of make a step forward, but I think you're going to see the Cardinals be active players in the offseason, whether it is, with trades or on the free agent market, because they're not used to being third in the NL Central. I mean, they're always up at the top every single year, and they fall below even the Brewers last season. I think was kind of a shock to them, and it's been a couple of years without a playoff appearance. So they're going to be pretty active in the offseason.
Yeah, it wasn't good, and Cardinal fans are kind of impatient, but they're a loyal fan base, man. I guess you know that as a baseball traditionalist and historian almost, so to speak, but the Cardinals fan base is deep, and it is deeply rooted and loyal. So I'm talking about probably one of the top 4 or 5 in the major leagues. I know their ticket prices reflect that. Their ticket prices are definitely 4 or 5 top highest tickets to get in the major leagues.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could just see that when they were in the playoffs, just the type of atmosphere. And I kind of, witnessed that a little bit with Houston this year, and just the type of atmosphere that, really carried them through the postseason. Every home game, they only lost one the entire postseason. So, St. Louis, when they were going to the World Series, you saw those types of crowds be absolutely insane. So, yeah, they're definitely diehard.
So let's move on to the next little piece of news I want to talk about going on today right now. So I mentioned before to you, Dan, that Arkansas fired their athletic director, a move that a lot of people have been thinking is imminent for the last month or so. It has a lot to do, from my opinion, of the success of the football team and Brett Bielema not doing as well, and the football team not being where everyone thinks it should be in year 5 of Brett Bielema. So, but the 80 is gone. I don't know how long Bielema's gone. I wouldn't think much longer with the 80 gone, but that just kind of, that's just one more piece to this huge coaching carousel that's about to revolve in the SEC. So you've got rumors of, so let me tell you right now, this is today, right now, hot off the press, fresh off the firing of Jeff Long, the Arkansas AD. Number one on Arkansas Razorbacks fans list, as far as I can tell right now, would be Gus Malzahn. He has Arkansas roots. However, he plays for he coaches a damn good team. He's in a damn good situation right now. I don't see it, even with the Arkansas roots, just not right now. He's number 6 in the country, regardless of whether he beats Alabama or not. He just beat the number 1 team in the country by 30. He's in a great situation, and much easier to recruit at Auburn than Arkansas. Number 2 on their list, I think right now, may be Charlie Strong. But another guy that's close to me is, Dan, Mike Norvell's not going to stay long in Memphis. His name is being mentioned in pretty much every coaching vacancy too, within the top 3 or 4 names anyway. So you got that going on. You got John Gruden rumored to be going to Tennessee. Chip Kelly rumored to be going to Florida. If Gus Malzahn does leave Auburn, that opens up a big spot there. You got the situation in Ole Miss, which Ole Miss could be facing sanctions by the NCAA, so we don't know what's going to go on there. They're basically in an interim basis right now with their head coach anyway. So all that going on, but I think we do this pretty much almost every year in the SEC, right, Dan? That the competition, the expectation level of all SEC teams specifically when it comes to football is so ridiculously, absurdly high that you see this carousel once every few years, and I think this is going to be a big offseason for the SEC as far as coaching carousel, particularly in football.
Yeah, I agree. And you just look at the SEC, you're going to see that type of rollover when they kind of have had a down year. I mean, they have those top level teams, but it used to be the bottom of the SEC could wallop on the Big 10 and the Big 12. I don't think that's really the case anymore. So those schools are going to have change coaches. I'm actually surprised Bielema lasted as long as he did. He always seemed to have like that one big win a year that would keep his job despite going 7-5 and only winning 7 games a year. So I'm surprised he lasted. He's still the coach. So I don't expect him to retain that job. But a couple of the names that you mentioned, like John Gruden, I don't see him leaving the booth. When you're making $6.5 million calling a football game once a week, and on top of that you have endorsements with Corona Light and different types of businesses like that. I don't think you're going to want that stress and pressures of coaching again, especially to go to the college ranks.
Well, they say a lot of people justify that, and Albert Haynesworth is big in this push to get John Gruden to Tennessee too, but a lot of people are saying that he has a son that goes to Tennessee, but you know what? That son doesn't play. He doesn't even play football, so I don't know, how that would really sway you either way.
Yeah, I think he can just go down to Tennessee with that $6.5 million paycheck and take a private jet down there if he wanted to, whenever he wanted. So I don't see him leaving the booth. Chip Kelly, I think 100% will go back to college. I think he's done with the NFL. And he has success in college wherever he goes. He knows how to recruit, and his system works in college. So,
and don't you think Florida is the ideal place for that? Back in his perfect days.
Yep, absolutely perfect spot. So I definitely think that's kind of a match made in heaven. So we'll see where the other changes go. I don't like you said before the show, I don't see Malzahn leaving Auburn. I mean, there was talk today. I was listening to a lot of AM radio, and all of the college football, talking heads love Auburn to not only make the playoff, but be in that championship game. I mean, there were a couple. I haven't followed college football as much as I usually do throughout the season, but they're talking about them walloping over Alabama in the Iron Bowl, which is kind of surprising to me. I looked into it a little bit today because we have a question, regarding that. But I wouldn't say it's any cakewalk to beat an undefeated Alabama team.
I think it's just talk. I think a lot of that is based on momentum, and I could understand that because a lot of it is who's hot at the right time. And Alabama's just 10-0. They're just 10-0, so a lot of people are forgetting about them. They're just Alabama, but prisoner of the moment. Auburn just came off that huge win over then number 1 Georgia. So that momentum, I think, is what has a lot of people saying that.
Yeah. So that's definitely true. It's just kind of surprising. It's the talk now after Alabama struggled with a Mississippi State team is watch out. They're vulnerable at this time, and they do have some injuries. But I wouldn't be surprised just to see them continue to be undefeated throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I will say this. I think the Iron Bowl comes down to it. The winner of that is in the playoffs. We have a question about that, so we'll talk about that in just a second. But it's a toss up. I'm not going to say Alabama's for sure going to beat Auburn, and that's the thing. It's so much parity within the top elite teams of the SEC. Anybody can beat anybody, and I don't know. If I was, like we said, if I was Malzahn, that would be a complete rebuild, a complete start over. You don't go from a top 5 program, which is kind of what I think they are. They're very close anyway, because they rebuild and reload every single year too. They're just under Alabama. I mean, no one is Alabama. What Nick Saban is doing at Alabama is all-time great dynasty in college football. It's hard to compete with that, and sometimes I think the folks in the SEC need to realize that you're you're competing for second best. Don't blow up the house, just because you're not, winning titles and beating Alabama. No one is beating Alabama. I mean, how many games has Alabama lost in the last 4 or 5 years? Seriously, so. I don't know. It's a tough call, but look out for the SEC coaching carousel coming up real soon. It's breaking out. I think you may see Bielema gone too. If that's for sure 100% guaranteed, which I believe it is, then you may see that move come pretty soon, because Arkansas may be falling behind Tennessee a little bit in that coaching search, and you need to get that jump. So interesting. Nothing like SEC football, man. It's a little crazy to me, Dan.
One crazy rumor I didn't tell you actually that I heard today. I think it was on PTI before the show. Lane Kiffin back to Tennessee.
No, I heard that too.
That would be insane. I couldn't even believe they proposed that idea.
After the way he left Tennessee, then went to UFC, and then got left at the airport, I'm done. I would never hire him. I'm sorry. I'll forfeit wins, even if I thought Lane Kiffin was going to be the next greatest thing. There's no way I'd hire Lane Kiffin, and I don't believe that at all. Tennessee would not do that. I'm telling you that. No way. But it's crazy. It is crazy because you never say never. I've even brought up Bobby Petrino back to Arkansas. Finish what we started. With the new AD would have to have a no motorcycles stipulation in his contract for that to happen. But you never know. I'm never gonna say never. I never thought LeBron would go back to Cleveland. So never say never. All right. So let's talk a little NFL real quick news today, Dan, or just over the last several days, really. Teddy Bridgewater's back, but it was named that Case Keenum will continue to be the starter. Bridgewater's not going to be back in that starting rotation anytime soon. Now, we're talking about a playoff team here, Dan. We're talking about a legit contender now. So a quarterback move is a pretty serious move. Is Keenum the guy the rest of the season, not even thinking about it, and just let Bridgewater kind of just wear the pads again and get used to being in football gear again?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keenum's definitely, the way he's played lately, is he's kind of cemented that role. Even if Bridgewater, obviously he's coming off such a gruesome injury, but, even if he wasn't, or if he was just a backup, I mean, when he was healthy, it's not like he was an amazing quarterback. He was kind of that game manager type. With Minnesota, they still had AP somewhat healthy, and he handed the ball off a lot, but I didn't see anything out of Bridgewater that would make me think he's a surefire franchise quarterback anyways. So obviously you stick with Keenum here. I don't think there's any question about it. And yeah, I mean, let Bridgewater get his reps in practice a little bit with the twos, the scout team. But there's no reason to put him on the field with the starters in an actual game unless, an injury happens to Keenum or terrible play, which we just haven't seen.
I actually like Keenum, and I think I've expressed this before. I think he probably should still be the starter in Los Angeles, which we'll get to golf in just a little bit. But Keenum wasn't their problem last year in Los Angeles, guys. But I think Keenum's okay. But the word is that Bridgewater is looking good, looking is mobile, and throwing. So looking healthy, so to speak, I guess is what I'm saying. So he's back, but it's something to keep an eye on. You don't make the move right now. They're doing fine. That defense is the anchor of the team, the whole team. And Case Keenum is not bad, man. You watch him, he's not bad. So don't rock that boat yet. But Bridgewater is an asset to you. If you think that he continues to look good, maybe in the offseason you really reevaluate it, or you trade him. Somebody like a Bridgewater could be great in Cleveland. someone like that looking for a quarterback, if he can prove to bounce back and be healthy and sustain and make it through practices and whatnot, then maybe you got some trade bait there. So we'll keep an eye on that. The next big move coming out of Buffalo today, I woke up to this news that Tyrod's benched. Tyrod is benched. They're going to go with a second-year guy, right? Nathan Peterman, is he second year?
No, he's a rookie. Rookie.
Oh, he's a rookie.
Fifth-round draft pick. Yep, out of Pitt.
It just seems, I guess because I've heard this conversation over and over and over for so long, for months and months, it just seems like Peterman is a second-year guy, so he's a rookie. Okay, but and Tyrod's not happy about it. Tyrod's going to be benched in favor of the rookie, Nathan Peterman, in Buffalo. You're closer to the situation than I, Dan. What's going on in Buffalo?
Yeah. Despite what a lot of reports that I've heard, I mean, Bills fans, for the most part, are pretty happy about this. I mean, you have some that are, we're throwing away the season, but ultimately, if you've actually watched the games, Tyrod's just not that type of quarterback. Like I kind of mentioned previously, he's not a guy that's going to win you games. He's that a sub-level game manager type who's mobile and can move around, but ultimately you're not going to rely on his throwing abilities. If you're losing or trailing in the fourth quarter, you're not going to want him to be able to throw your way out of it. So I like the Peterman move. I liked him coming into the draft. I think he is a solid starter. I don't know if he's going to be the main guy in Buffalo, but this is how you find out. You're 5-4, you're trending downwards, and honestly, they're a lucky 5-4. If you watch the games earlier in the season, I wrote an article about it a couple times, how they were, there were certain points in a couple of their wins the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season where they were extremely lucky to pull out wins, whether it be the worst personal foul I've ever called on, or I've ever seen called on Von Miller when they played the Broncos, that allowed Buffalo to win the game. So there's been things like that they're lucky to be 5-4. And I think the team in the front office kind of know that, and they know they're not going anywhere this season. So they have a lot of draft picks. They're building towards the future, and this move is towards the future. But I think at the same time, they also think Tyrod's not doing anything to win us games. Peterman's not, when he's been out there, he hasn't shown that he's been a detriment to the offense or the team. So let's just swap him and see what happens.
Yep. I don't know, for a team battling for playoff position, what is their record now? Are they 5-4?
5-4.
Yeah, 5-4. So I mean,
sixth in the AFC.
What place?
Sixth. They'd have the last wild card spot right now if the playoffs started today.
Right, and I guess second in the AFC East.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they're right there. They are right there. So this is, kind of a gamble mid-season. So I think pressure probably got to them. I mean, the calls for this has been going on for so long. Like I said, it seems like for months, since July, it seems. So it's finally going to happen. We'll have to see what happens. But really nothing to lose, though, right, Dan? I mean, nothing to lose. I mean,
they're not a playoff team. They aren't a playoff team. Doesn't matter what quarterback is playing for them. They're just not that good, to be honest with you. And it's they're looking towards the future. They want to see if they have anything in Peterman, rather than, with their 2 first-round picks they have next year, they can package that up to move to a top 3 pick possibly and draft one of those franchise type guys in the draft. Or if they have something in Peterman, maybe they don't have to trade him. They can get, an impact player in that first round, and with that second first-round pick, maybe draft a quarterback a little bit later in the first. So you're still getting that maybe franchise guy. I think it's a smart play if you're looking at it from that perspective of they want to establish what they have in Peterman to value what they have in the draft, because that's ultimately where they're going to build their team.
Well, and this is a good time for it because there is a little bit of hint of pressure because you are in the playoff hunt. Technically, I understand what you're saying, Dan, and I agree with you, but they are in the playoff hunt. So you have a hint of pressure, like we want to see what you got. We trust you to get it done, but hey, you're fighting for a playoff spot. So when it goes south or you don't win as many games as you thought and you've come up just a little bit short, that's great experience for a young quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, this is there's no better time than, the time that you get on the field. The practice reps don't do it. And with that, with your team and offense kind of relying on you to lead them in a way that maybe Tyrod didn't, be your own type of guy. And Peterman's just the better passer. He'll make that passing offense more vertical. That's why they got Kelvin Benjamin. That's why Charles Clay came back from injury and he wants to be successful. But Tyrod, 56 yards in an entire game. That's even below Tyrod levels. So it's just the way it is, I guess.
So, last thing, I'm sorry, that was me. That was an ad going off. I wonder what the hell is that crazy noise here. One of the last things here I want to talk about before we get into college is, this is college, but the UCLA players, the players that were arrested for stealing in the Louis Vuitton store a week ago, just about a week ago. One of them, LiAngelo Ball, Cody Riley, and Jalen Hill, I believe, were the other two guys that play for UCLA. But Trump made a call. Everything's okay. Everything is okay. They're going to be a few of the greatest basketball players on earth eventually because they're back in the U.S. China's killing us in everything, including college basketball. So we got to get those great American players back. And we did. And they're back, and now they're suspended. UCLA officially suspended them. I guess indefinitely don't really have a timetable on this suspension, but that was likely. I mean, it's kind of been a national embarrassment, right? Kind of an international incident with this. So I fully expected them to be suspended.
Yeah. I mean, especially when one has the Ball name. I mean, that's. Scrutiny comes with that, so I think that elevated the situation, and obviously Trump getting involved, he got his thank you, so I'm sure he's happy about that. He wanted that thank you, and he got it. So, make America great again, I guess. With
make the Pac-12 great again.
Hey, Colorado 2-0, beat Denver by 20 last night.
Woo! Look at that little in-state rivalry there, huh?
Yeah. Well, Denver's pretty terrible. I think they're like they're on Canisius's level when it comes to
Denver. What conference are they in? They were in the Sun Belt for a minute.
That minute ended, and they're in something, but I don't really even know. So
that goes a long way to prove that legitimacy right there for you, Dan. But good win. Yeah, keep an eye on them. College basketball is here, man. So. Trump gets involved. You see the other players back home now, they're suspended. So I don't know if you saw this today, Dan. This is totally not sports related, but Senator Steve Cohen out of Tennessee from Memphis actually introduced articles of impeachment on Trump today. Did you see that? And
no, I did not actually.
Yeah, it's getting serious. Yeah, and I'm considering doing the same thing to you as our fantasy football league commissioner. So articles of impeachment could be coming your way as our fantasy football commissioner. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the end of the show. We'll talk more about that with our man Orlando Torres, who will be jumping in here soon. So, but that is kind of the news going on right now today, November 15th, 2017. We'll jump into some mailbag questions and talk college basketball and college football coming up next. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the new viewers we have got, viewers and listeners of the podcast over the past few weeks. This thing is, it's swelling, Dan. It's swelling.
Yeah, I mean, I took some antibiotics, so hopefully the swelling will decrease the pain, but, we like that was a bad joke. I don't know. I'm just going to end that. I blame you and your taunting throughout the show.
I'm kind of with you. I don't see all
your whole commissioner impeachment talk that got to my head, and it affected me. I had that joke perfect, and it's now nowhere because of that impeachment talk. So, oh man,
it's getting real.
So yeah. Welcome to our viewers, to our new viewers. This is us, I guess. Brandon calls me out.
You've been getting a lot of new and interesting hate or / questions or just feedback in general. New audience. We get well. So maybe we should just talk to our listeners real quick. When you submit a question, we want something with substance.
I enjoy the comments. Some of them make me laugh. Some of them are uncalled for. Some are just there. And so put an actual question other than just comments. That's what I'll say. For those that actually submitted stuff, you know what I'm talking about. But we've gotten some nice questions so far. We have a couple new guys submitting questions on this episode. So keep it going.
Gilly Stevens must be one of your cousins or something.
He's
he got
he's
two
been a little
questions
obsessed this week. We like it.
I do. I've seen his correspondence on Facebook and everything else. So he has been very active. So we appreciate it. But he's got two mailbag questions for you this week. So it's the Gilly Stevens show.
Yeah, you submit them to me. I mean, he asked if he's been nice. He's been, if you hop on our Facebook page, you like our stuff, you share our stuff. He shared our podcast from last week. I think that's where he kind of reconnected with us. I've seen his name before, but he's a guy that submitted a good substance question, and that's what we put up there. So I'm looking forward to answering it.
So. We'll get back to Gilly. The first one comes from Rick Birch. And the first one I want to talk about today is the college basketball variety. Since we were just talking about college basketball, and since it's off and running big time. And like I said, if you haven't visited the website, myfantasysportstalk.com, visit it because the college basketball section is taking off. It's growing. It's swelling. We're going to have to add a second home page just for college basketball, thanks to Dan. He's previewing and predicting every single game. But I love it. 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 Rick Birch says, we aren't through the first week of college basketball, but what teams do you like as sleepers for the tourney in this short span? I'm loving Purdue right now. They aren't necessarily a sleeper, but no one mentions them in regards to winning the tournament. Rick Birch. Dan, I'll let you go first. We were both high on Purdue last year.
Yeah. I watched the Purdue Marquette game last night. It was actually one of my preview and prediction pieces yesterday. And yeah, I mean they look good. They got Vince Edwards. They got a young guard. They got their 2 7-footers in Haas, and the other one that sounds like Haas. But
Matt Haams, he's from Amsterdam. He's from Amsterdam.
Yes. How could I forget? But the 2 7-footer, I mean, they got some players and their experience this year. A team that won the Big Ten last year, they got almost everybody back. Obviously, they lost Caleb Swanigan. But other than that, I mean, their entire team came back, and they're with Matt Painter, a good head coach. I like what they can offer this season, and I think you are going to hear their name kind of come up more. Obviously, as the season grows, we're still pretty early to talk, national championship or Final Four. But yeah, I mean, I definitely like Purdue.
If you got 2 7'3" guys on your team, though, I like you a lot, and they're getting minutes too. It ain't like they're scrubs. Both of them, Isaac Haas and this new kid Matt Haams, is playing 7'3" from Amsterdam. You can't say in
the game yesterday, Haams is. I don't know if you watched any of or saw this kid, but his arms are like
twigs,
very tiny. Yeah, twiggy. Like Haas has some build to him. He's got some muscles. He can bench press both of us. So Haams, he plays a different style. I like it, but they're both rim protectors.
Oh yeah, no kidding. So in like 15 minutes of play, he's averaging like 9, 5, and 3 blocks, close to 3 blocks. So he knows his role, and he's only going to get better. True freshman from Amsterdam. So I do like Purdue. So, okay, outside of Purdue, though, who else would you have on this list that you might consider a sleeper?
I got the team that we've talked about, Missouri. They haven't, played a lot yet. And Michael Porter Jr., the number 1 recruit, possible number 1 pick in the draft. He hurt his hip and has only played 2 minutes, but their team is pretty deep. And they have a guy that I know pretty well in Cassius Robertson. I covered him the last 2 years with Canisius, got to see him up close and personal. And the guy's a baller. And, that fifth-year graduate senior type, he knows the game of college basketball. He knows how to play it, and he's not going to step down from a challenge. And, I mean, he dominated the other night in their opening round game. So I like what they have. They don't even have just those two, though. Michael Porter's brother, Jonte, that dude can play too. He's a little bit taller, beefier down low, and I like his game. And of course, Kevin Puri, he impressed me with the way that he can play as well. So they got 4 to 5 guys that I'm confident in night in, night out. And, Quanzo Martin's the type of coach that, gets wins right away at a program, and he can turn it around. So I like where Missouri's heading. You said the other day that they're a tournament team. I don't doubt it, and I expect them to kind of advance in the tournament. They're not just going to be a one and done.
That's crazy you mentioned them, because I've have 3 teams on this list, just to throw it out there. It's way, way, way too early for me to even analyze this. So I have good reasoning for the 3 teams that I picked, but one of those 3 teams was Missouri. You were so right. Quanzo Martin came in getting recruits already and turned that team around, because they have not been good the last couple of years. Michael Porter Jr. So, and the 3 teams I have here, they're going to have something in common. But the other one, you got Shaka Smart down in Texas with Mohamed Bamba. Big dude. He has like a wingspan of like 11-17. He's just a big dude. So he's an NBA talent. And the other team I had is a team that Memphis got up close and personal with the other night, is Alabama, because Alabama dominated Memphis. I don't know if this doesn't really say as much about Alabama or Memphis, because Memphis is going to struggle this year, but Alabama completely controlled Memphis, won by 12, and didn't even have like their top 2 or 3 players. And one of those players was Colin Sexton. So all those guys, Missouri, Texas, and Alabama, they all have a lot in common. One of them happens to be very good young black head coaches. Number 2, they all got top 10 NBA. All of them have top 10 NBA prospects on their team, and they're already getting top 25 votes. So, and they play for Power 5 conferences too. So, I think all 3 of them. You come March Madness time, and I would not be surprised one bit if all 3 of those teams could end up in the 4, 5, 6 line. Worst case scenario, even for someone like a Missouri who's really climbing up, it could be in one of those 8, 9 matchups. But I definitely think they're all tournament teams, and they all got something in common. Like I said, none of them are ranked, but they are starting to get top 25 votes and recognition, basically because when you get in March Madness time, Dan, you don't want to face a team that's got a top 10 NBA draft pick on their team. You do not. That's just a bad matchup. Very few teams are going to be able to match up with that. And you see that year after year through March Madness, those elite players take their team on through.
Yeah. I mean, I think it started with Carmelo Anthony back in the day. The only time he actually won anything, he was kind of that freshman sensation that took his team to the championship. And we've kind of
you remember also who was in that Final Four? Same deal.
I do not.
Dwayne Wade, Marquette.
D Wade. Yep. Of course.
Same thing. Freshman took his team all the way, and I remember that because they were in Memphis's conference, and they were tough. That was back in the day, man. They were tough. Had a few of the shooters too, the white guys. I forgot their names, but man, I forgot those guys' name. But that was a good team. But Marquette, Dwayne Wade took them all the way. So you just don't want to see those type of guys when it comes to March Madness time. You don't want to see them. So I think all 3 of those teams are like, and Texas in particular, I know they're not as good as they have been, but the Big 12 is not really good this year, guys. The Kansas is way up here than everyone else is way down here. So I think Texas has an opportunity in the Big 12 this year to really make some noise.
And Shaka Smart's been able to get a couple of recruiting classes in there, so he knows how to recruit. So I'd put full faith in his abilities, not only to coach on the floor, but to get those type of players. And like you mentioned, Mamba Bamba is one of them, and he's got some other ones in there that I think they're going to be solid contenders in the Big 12.
Well, here's the other thing: having a dominant NBA prospect point guard or shooting guard is one thing, but a big man is something totally different, because a lot of teams, most teams, just cannot match up with that. You just can't.
Yeah, college, it makes more of an impact for sure than what you would see in the NBA.
So appreciate the questions. The question, Rick Birch, it's way, way, way too early, but keep an eye on those guys. I think me and Dan both agree on Missouri, so keep an eye on Missouri to make some noise in the SEC. I think the SEC will be pretty good this year. Arkansas is good, looking good. You got Florida looking really good. Of course, Kentucky looks good. Several really good teams. I know even for Mississippi State is supposed to be up with Ben Howland finally there as his 2nd or 3rd year at Mississippi State, so you should be looking for big things from them. Quanzo Martin doing big things, and Avery Johnson at Alabama. So we'll keep an eye on it. Just the beginning of a long college basketball season, and I can't wait. I've loved it so far, Dan. We may not have got the 24-hour marathon kickoff, but we've had close to it. I mean, we've had nonstop games since Friday.
Yeah, and tomorrow and Friday you get even better because now the Puerto Rico tip-off at Myrtle Beach, Paradise Jam, 2K Classic, Gildan, Charleston Classic. I mean, they're going on tomorrow. Did you know I took off work? I'm Thursday, Friday, 10:30 a.m. my time, Eastern game start. So it's close to the 24-hour marathon. It just starts at 10:30. So I actually get to sleep instead of getting up at 2 a.m. So it's okay. I'll accept it.
I tell you, Dan, I would have loved to be off with you and enjoying that, and drinking a few Heineken's too. I'm actually covering a big high school basketball tournament this week, Friday and Saturday, full day of games, 8 games total between 2 games that we're going to be covering live on Facebook. So, and a shout out to Tubetown Online. I know, Dan, you've liked and seen some of the content there, but we're going to be a brand new facility, brand new gym, Brooklyn High School in Brooklyn, Arkansas. They're unveiling their brand new arena. It's state of the art for high school. It is a nice arena. They're going to have teams in from all over the state of Arkansas in for this tournament. Over 3 days, we'll be covering live on Facebook Friday and Saturday. So I've got a big weekend of high school basketball. Start somewhere. You got to start somewhere.
And props to you. I heard your interview on 95.3 The Ticket in Arkansas. Our man Brandon Reed going on the airwaves for Tubetown. It was pretty good. I liked it, and promoting their Facebook Live stuff. So I think we've seen an increase in our Facebook viewers, and head over to Tubetown because you don't know just by the name what exactly it is. So Tubetown it up if you don't know, because I didn't know before I met you, but now I do with all their Facebook Live videos. So they're fantastic over there.
Yeah, we try our best to be ESPN at the high school level. So check it out. It's going to be a big weekend of high school basketball on Tubetown. So let's move on from the college basketball, the high school basketball. We even squeezed some high school basketball in there, Dan. Man, we're just awesome. We're just awesome. This is so much, and there's so much content in this podcast. If you're telling me we would have talked high school basketball on this podcast, I would have said you're crazy. You're crazy, but we did. So now let's go over to that guy we were talking about early. It's Gilly Stevens making his debut to the podcast. Appreciate it, Gilly. And he wants to talk college football. Now, who do you have making the college football playoff? Are my Hurricanes legit contenders after manhandling Notre Dame? And I'll just kind of start out, Dan. Yes, Gilly, your Hurricanes. I like them, and they're playing really well now, partly because they didn't have to make that trip to Arkansas State, Jonesboro, Arkansas, earlier in the year because of the hurricane, ironically enough, and they didn't make that trip. So, and I don't think Arkansas State would have had the horses to compete with you guys, but it was going to be fun, and you guys would have probably were going to be the biggest attraction, biggest team to ever set foot in Centennial Bank Stadium and whatever it's been called in the past in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So very upset that didn't get to happen. But yes, I like the Hurricanes. Just don't slip up like Clemson did and fall at Pitt like Clemson did last year. So as long as you can do that, I think you're good. The winner of the Miami-Clemson game is in. Would you agree with that, Dan? The winner of the Miami-Clemson game, it's already been said, that's your conference championship game. Yep. The winner of that's got to be in.
Yeah, and sadly for Gilly, I think Clemson's going to probably end up victorious. I mean, I do like what the Hurricanes have done. Mark Richt has done a fantastic job at his alma mater. He's done a great job recruiting. They have players, but I just think Clemson will ultimately be a little bit more experienced, and that defense, although it's struggled recently, is phenomenal. So both defenses are, to be honest with you. But I think like you said, that matchup is gonna decide. That's one playoff spot there. So it's basically the rest of the teams are battling for 3.
So next, let's talk about the Big 12 a little bit, Dan. Oklahoma is the only team in the Big 12 with any kind of shot to make the playoffs. And their schedule gets kind of weak with the Big 12 not having a title game.
No, they do this year.
Oh, the Big 12 does have a title game this year.
They added it with 10 teams. So it's been some controversy as to what why they did it. But yeah, they finally added it for that reason, to kind of help their playoff chances.
Okay, well, I need to reanalyze the standings then. Who is Oklahoma going to meet?
So basically, the way it works out, it's going to be Oklahoma, and right now, if it were to end, it would be TCU. But what basically can happen, TCU is going to be without Kenny Hill likely this week. If they falter at all, if they lose, then it's going to be a repeat of Bedlam. So it's going to be Oklahoma State. It's hard to beat a team twice. So if TCU loses at all, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are going to be there. And I would actually lean towards the Cowboys to take down the Sooners if that was the championship game, because it's hard to beat a team like that twice in 1 year.
Well, that was just a high-scoring shootout anyway, right? Yeah. I mean, that could have.
There's no defense, and I mean, Oklahoma doesn't have a defense. They're going to have to outscore everybody in every game, but they're that good to be able to.
They are, but I'm not sold on them as being one of the even top 3 best teams in the country. Their record states so, but if Oklahoma loses to, watch West Virginia too. You know, they could slip at West Virginia, or I think they may host West Virginia, but regardless of wherever the game is, watch out for West Virginia. And then I did not realize I did realize that, but I completely forgot that they did implement a title game. So Oklahoma loses one more game out of these last 3, they're out. And the Big 12 is out. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Oklahoma's their only chance. Is the Big 12's only chance, and yeah, you're not going to get a 2-loss Big 12 team in the playoff.
No, not this year. Pac-12 is out. They got no serious contenders at all, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting. Then Wisconsin is really kind of carrying the torch for the Big Ten. You look at their schedule, but they can't help the conference schedule they were given. They just happen to not really play a lot of the big dogs. Not their fault, though. And then them, so, man, I don't know. We talked earlier, I think Auburn, the winner of the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama, I think they will get in. I think the resume will be strong enough for them to get in. I think the winner of course, Miami, Clemson is in. Then you're just kind of a hodgepodge mess, Dan, and that's what's going to happen. If Auburn beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl and Miami beats Clemson in that title game, you're going to have a mess. And this is why I am in favor eliminating these conference title games, expand the playoffs, because a lot of teams could say Auburn beats Alabama. Alabama wouldn't even play in the conference championship, but still might end up making the Final Four.
Yeah, and then what if Georgia beats Auburn in the conference championship? Do they get in over Auburn, even though it's been 1-1, right, but they're the conference champion?
And Alabama wasn't even there. And
then is it all 3 SEC teams in? I mean, it's insane how the scenarios can work out. I was listening to a Dennis Dodd interview earlier today, and he was talking about the crazy scenarios. And the one team that he said don't count out is Ohio State. Even with their 2 losses, he said there's some chaos that's ahead for those teams ahead of them. That it could be a crazy scenario where obviously Wisconsin is could lose to Ohio State. You have other teams that can falter to lesser ranked teams, and that'll allow Ohio State to make its way back into the playoff. And he said, don't be surprised if the committee goes that way, because they seem to favor the Buckeyes and Urban Meyer when it comes to their rankings a little bit.
I do see that, but I can't see that. I understand that, but I can't see that. It's just going to be a mess, but I'm in total favor of eliminating the college conference games. You could start the playoffs a week earlier. You can get this done, man. At least 8. You got to expand it to 8. Get it done, man. That's why I'm sure I've expressed this before. I'm not the hugest college football fan. It's an exciting sport. I love football, so of course I keep up with it, but I'm not the biggest college football fan just because of the way it's the most anticlimactic finish to a season to me of almost any sport. It's helped a lot that they got the playoff now, but it's not quite enough because we talked about the messed up scenarios. It's not quite enough. So
the biggest thing for me with college football, and I don't know if you notice this, but a game lasts 4 to 4.5 hours with all the stoppages, after first down. That's my biggest part.
Well, a lot of scoring too. If you have a game like Oklahoma State, and some of the other higher scoring games, it's in the 50s and 60s. I mean, that's why the game is 4.5 hours long.
So. Yeah, I mean, I was watching the Bedlam game, and it was like 28-21, and there was 7 minutes off the clock in the first quarter. I mean, it was insane. It was like, this game is going to last forever. So that's my biggest attraction. I mean, I'll watch games. I actually like watching film of the college games after the fact more than watching them live sometimes.
It's going to be interesting. It's not up for us to decide. It's people. It's like, what is it? What's the board, Dan? Like 8 people and maybe a little bit computer info too. But someone's going to be here. We are with a 4-team playoff, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's way beyond where we were, but you've got to expand this thing. Just 4 is not. Think about it, Dan. You got 5 power conferences and only 4 playoff teams. That's not suitable enough. That's not acceptable enough. You got to expand it. Eliminate those conference. What does the conference championship really mean? Like I said, if Alabama can get in and possibly win the whole title and not even make their conference championship game, huh?
It means money. That's basically all it is. It's just the way.
But a game is a game.
Those schools.
A game is a game. I don't care what you call it. I don't care if it's a conference title game or a first-round playoff game. I don't care what you call it, a bowl game, the Beef O'Brady Bowl, the Bell Helicopter Bowl. I don't care what it is. It's a football game. You'll make money on it. So, I don't know. College football is – I think you'll see it soon. And this thing will expand at least 8, and that will help big time. But thanks for the question, Gilly Stevens. We'll talk to you in just a little bit. That's our college sports. We're going to jump in next to some NBA and some mailbag questions and talk about LeBron James being a little punk and all kinds of things. Who's on the waiver wire? All that's coming up next with our man Orlando Torres. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks to all of our new viewers, all of our new question submitters like Gilly Stevens, who wants to know about college football and who's going to be in. Just a big thanks to all you guys that check out the site every single day, every single week, MyFantasySportsTalk.com. We're now about to introduce our man from San Ann. He is Orlando Torres, repping them Spurs. What up, dog?
Hey, what's up, brother? How's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. Sorry you had to work late. You missed a little piece. You missed a little piece of the podcast.
Yeah, no, I know. I was thinking, I was like, man, I've been having some bad luck lately with timing. I'm gonna have to change my name from Last Place Lando to Never on Time Lando because that's what I've been lately.
That's all right. I'll rearrange the whole show for you because I want you here, man, to talk about the big debate of the day and of the week, really, probably of the whole fantasy year and the trade that was not. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show, but glad you're here. So now we're going to talk NBA. Let's just move straight on into the NBA now that our man Orlando is here. So where did I want to start today? Let's start with our man Chad Thies. Orlando, why has LeBron become such a little effing punk? You see how he played against the Knicks? Dirty. Chad Thies. Orlando, do you agree with that, Orlando? Did you see that?
Yeah, no, I saw it, and I'm gonna sense that Chad's a Knicks fan, so he's probably being a little salty. I'm assuming, being the way he made that statement, it was ridiculously silly. I mean, there was chit-chatting going back and forth. All LeBron did was compliment Dennis Smith Jr. after they played the Mavs, said he should have been a Knick, and carried on into the game, and him and Cantor almost got in this fight. I mean, they got a little out of hand. It didn't get too physical. It was pretty entertaining, to say the least. But I think it's just blown out of proportion. The Cavs right now struggling to stay in the East with losing players left and right. I think that's the last thing LeBron needs is negativity. He was just complimenting Dennis Smith Jr., and it just got out of hand. And, for the 15 years, I don't even know why Knicks are getting mad, because for the past 15 years, LeBron James has dominated the Knicks. They should go to Wikipedia, and under owner of the New York Knicks, they should put LeBron James, because that's how bad it's been when LeBron faces the Knicks. So that's all I got to say. I don't think
it's not just the Knicks; it's the whole league. They better recognize of just who they're messing with here.
Yeah, so I don't think he was being a effing punk. I just think it got blown out of proportion. That's pretty much it.
Oh, I agree with you, Orlando. I didn't see that. I mean, I heard the back and forth about the Dennis Smith Jr. Comment, and I agree with him. I think I would prefer Dennis Smith Jr. over Frank Ntilikina, who's been doing good. He's putting up decent numbers, and the Knicks have been doing good, but I would prefer Dennis Smith Jr. But anyway, man, it's just a little bit of trash talk. I don't think anything was dirty, and plus, it was Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball. Can you only imagine what folks were throwing and screaming at LeBron James every time he steps in that arena? So, and I think they all just need to recognize and realize their place.
And for him to rub more salt in the wound, he overcame a 23-point deficit just to kind of shove it in their faces a little bit more. So
that's what I was
nice to see.
They were down huge going into the fourth quarter, and 43 fourth quarter points later, the Knicks wound themselves and talked themselves into a loss via the King. That's what happened. So you need to realize your place in the pecking order of the league. If you would have been quiet and shut your mouth, then you might have walked out with a win. But you poked the sleeping giant, you poked the bear, you poked the king, and you wound up with a loss in a game you had no business losing. And I think even New York media realized that and was saying that. I think even New York media was like, yeah, we probably got carried away there. If we wouldn't have poked the bear, then we probably would have walked out with a win. This had a lot more to do with us antagonizing LeBron James than it did anything LeBron James did. So that's just something you'll learn. As a young team, as a new team, that's just something you'll learn. But the Knicks have been doing good this year. And they'll learn. They'll learn to not cost themselves wins. But they lost. They walked out with a big fat L. Dan, did you see this or keep up with this at all?
Yeah. I mean, on court, I don't think LeBron did anything dirty or anything like that. I mean, it was just an intense basketball game, on the way through a comeback. But when it comes to LeBron talking, I didn't like what he said, disrespecting Frank and throwing love towards Dennis Smith Jr. I mean, Frank's been doing just as well. I actually played him in daily fantasy during that game. He got me over 40 points, so I was a big fan of that. But I don't understand why LeBron needs to be talking about those other two players. And he said his purpose was to throw shade at Phil Jackson. Well, who cares? Why are you talking about Phil Jackson? To me, it seems like LeBron's been a little bit more outspoken ever since he won that championship in Cleveland. Thinks he, can kind of do and say whatever he wants. And, on the court, I guess he can. But there is this type of arrogance that has come out in LeBron kind of recently over the last few years that you didn't really see for the bulk of his NBA career. So I think maybe LeBron needs to focus more on winning games than talking about two other teams that he has nothing to do with.
Okay, and I understand that, but you realize there may be something to the Phil Jackson thing, Dan, because you realize who instigated that situation. You remember that. It was less than a year ago who instigated the Phil Jackson, LeBron James thing, talking about the posse.
Talking about posse. That was blown out of proportion by
No,
LeBron
I agree
too.
with you. I agree with you. I completely agree with you, but not in the head of LeBron James.
I think that's crazy. He's getting a little bit ridiculous.
But I can see how that was actually meant to be a little bit of jab at Phil Jackson. I completely understand that. Don't you see that point, though?
No, because I don't see yet that I actually think Dennis Smith Jr. has struggled in his time in the NBA so far compared to where I think
he plays for a sorry-ass team.
Hey,
I was about to say that.
No, he's on my fantasy team, and that's no sorry-ass fantasy team. That's domination. And he's coming towards the end of that bench, so maybe Newbury should offer me a trade for him. Is all I'm trying to say. That will not get vetoed.
No, he ain't doing that bad. He's doing good. He just plays for a real bad team. Frank Ntilikina is doing good too. I would say they're just about tit for tat. But Dennis Smith Jr. had a little bit of injury issue to start the season. I think didn't even really play a whole lot from the get go. But he plays for one of the worst teams in the NBA. I mean, they are. I think record-wise, they are. So I'm not going to put that on him. But, I don't think it was dirty. Interesting, but you learn to keep your mouth shut. And I agree with Orlando. I think our man, Chad Thies here, may be a little bit of a Knicks fan. That's what it sounds like to me. Because I think that's what's overblown here, the reaction to what LeBron James did, Chad. So I'm with Orlando there. But appreciate the question. Let's talk about some more NBA here. Let's see where we go. We'll go back to our man. How about this? We'll go back to our man, Gilly Stevens. He's back. Orlando Gilly is one of the new submitters. I don't know if you saw how active he's been on the website and Facebook and just all the interaction this week. He's been just a treasure for the MFST crew this week. So he got 2 mailbag questions this week, Orlando.
Nice. Is that even possible for people who are with the site to get that much of a priority?
Hey,
He sent nice questions that actually had substance.
I'm not hating. I'm saying that's a great thing. That's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Orlando
so.
loves you, Gilly.
I'm not trying to start a fight between me and him, like Casey and Ryan over there. So
Well, here's the thing: if you produce respectable questions and actually form a question in a way that could really just create debate amongst us, then I'm all for it. But I imagine we got people submitting a lot of questions every single day, though, right, Dan? I mean, it's not. I'm sure this is not something new. You probably have people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did. Gilly did receive special treatment this week with the 2 questions submit because I mean we did have multiple questions that went unanswered. So I apologize. See, everything is coming back on Brandon. You're turning everything against me today. I can already feel it. It started with the trade chatter earlier in the show before Orlando joined us. Orlando, you missed it. I had this great joke, and Brandon said he was going to impeach me. So then I got all flustered.
God.
And the joke got ruined. The audience is still.
You know what got ruined? My fantasy football season got ruined.
That got ruined when you drafted Jamal Charles and Isaiah Crowell to be your running backs.
I didn't draft Jamal Charles. I signed him. But I'm trying to make moves. I'm trying to better myself, better my fantasy team, and the man is keeping me down. And I don't think it's right. But I'll tell you what. I'm going to win an NBA title. Mark it. And how I'm going to do it is picking up great waiver wire acquisitions occasionally. And that's what Gilly Stevens wants to know. What is the best waiver wire find in the NBA fantasy right now? So our league is fairly deep, though, right, Dan? We're 12 in basketball, right?
Yep, 12 men.
Deep, and people are keeping up. This is a league of basketball ballers, I'd have to say. People are really keeping up because I went to look for Bobby Portis the other day. Damn, he had 1 game in the NBA and he's already snagged up. I think DDT got him. DDT got another guy I wanted too. I think, guy that Orlando should be very familiar with, Kyle Anderson. I went to get Kyle Anderson. I'm like, no one knows who Kyle Anderson is. And if anybody did, it's probably Orlando. Orlando picked him up. No, I think it's DDT. So DDT is watching this waiver wire like a hawk.
Well, he needs it. His team is terrible. So go DDT. How about you pick up some wins instead of players?
He's trying, Dan. So harsh, Dan. Are you going to veto his waiver wire pickup too?
Listen, I'm last year's champ. That's all I got to say. Team name.
Oh, wait. After you won that championship, you sound like LeBron over here, you know?
Yeah. All that.
I think a little bit, I understand.
After the championship, yeah. Little conceited, a little arrogant after the championship is what it sounds like to me.
Yes, that's true.
Dirty. Just dirty. But anyway, what's the best waiver wire pickups? But hey, guys, seriously though, Bobby Portis, because he knocked out his competition on his team, so he's getting a lot more minutes now that he's back from suspension. He's doing great. But I looked at your man, Orlando, in St. Ann, Kyle Anderson, doing really good things. He's got to be one of those other great young pieces for you guys, along with Dejounte Murray. But Kyle Anderson, he's putting up really good fantasy numbers right now.
Yeah, no, he's putting pretty good numbers. He's getting more minutes. He just posted his second double-double the other night. And with Kawhi gone, I mean, the Spurs are just they just keep the rotation going and just figuring out what they have. There was a little conspiracy going on. I don't know how much I'm going to buy into it. Of course, it's just what's going around that Kawhi's he should come back this week. I believe. I think it's Friday. He gets it Thunder. I'm not too sure. If not, it might be sometime next week. But kind of wants his guys to get used to playing without Kawhi in case something happens, like what happened in the postseason in Golden State. Again, I'm not sure how much I'm buying into that. I really don't believe that. I do believe they're holding out Kawhi until he gets back. But as far as like Kyle Anderson, and we've seen like Paul Gasol, just their play and the minutes go up. And Kyle Anderson's been with us for a couple of seasons, and he's finally starting to blossom. It's been pretty good seeing as a fan.
Yeah, he's getting that opportunity without Kawhi, which I think that has a lot to do with Powell's success too. Just everybody's getting a little bit more touches on the offensive side, and probably more missed shots too, which is contributing to both LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol's fantasy success anyway. So I've got our leagues fantasy waiver wire pulled up right now, but okay, so you already gave you two there, Bobby. If you're not playing in a league as deep, then you may be able to snag one of those guys. I'd recommend Bobby Portis number one, then also look at Kyle Anderson too. So if you had another guy outside those, or another few guys outside those two that we've already mentioned, Orlando, who would you look at on the waiver wire?
Okay, so looking at the waiver wire, and I'm here, looking at the way our scoring system is. Tyler Johnson, he's been doing pretty good. I know he was out for a little bit with the sickness, and he's coming back pretty soon. So that'd be pretty sneaky ad if he's available in this league.
He's back. I picked him up and only dropped him because he's one of my guys. Dan mentioned this a few weeks ago about having a few guys at the bottom that you could replace and swap out every game depending on who's playing, and he was one of the guys for me. So he's doing good. He's doing good. I just think he's replaceable, but he's out there. I picked him up, played him for a game, dropped him, but definitely an asset.
Yeah, no, he's out there. And speaking of the Spurs, Patty Mills too. Patty Mills has been, he's been doing pretty good. He's got.
So let me ask you real quick, Dan, Orlando. Sorry to get off track here, but because I haven't really sat down and watched a Spurs game this year. What is the point guard situation? Who is starting? Who's getting the bulk of the minutes, or is it committee? I mean, is Tony Parker playing? What is with the point guard situation?
I know Parker's coming back pretty soon, probably like another month. They're going to take their time with him, even if they are.
He's not going to be the starter, though, right? Or are they going to?
There's no way he could be the starter. Guys, I don't want to say, yeah, he's ready at the tail end of his career. I'm just going to say before Dan goes ahead and starts throwing that out at me, I know he's pretty much done. DeJounte Murray's been doing pretty good. He's had some struggles up and down, but I liked what he's shown, and Patty Mills kind of in that rotation as well.
So who is it? Is it Patty Mills to start getting 60% or DeJounte Murray? What's the split there? Who's starting and what's the minute split?
It started off at first DeJounte Murray, Patty Mills, so it was maybe like a 60-40 split where Murray was just getting a lot of work. He started having a little bit of a slump, and that's when Patty Mills started going on. So it's been kind of balanced lately. It's been more leaning towards Patty Mills, though, and with Murray coming off the bench, but it's been more learning experience for Murray. But whenever he has a hot hand, Pop rides with the hot hand, and that's when you see Murray kind of really go into what he could do.
Yep. And I'm sorry, did I sidetrack you? Waiver wire guys, any other guys?
No, I was just mentioning Patty Mills. The same thing with the minutes and the work that he's been getting. He had a pretty good game against Dallas yesterday. And another guy I would mention is Mason Plumlee coming out the Nuggets. He's been doing pretty good. He's also one of those guys that you mentioned you could kind of sub in and out if you need to fill in a spot for the day. He's one of those guys. Looking at our waiver wire, it's not pretty. There's guys you could use, but there's not really a top priority ad like a Kyle Anderson, as you mentioned earlier. That you must keep on your waiver wire.
Yeah,
keep on your team.
Our league is pretty deep and everybody's keeping up, and then you've got a slew of guys that are injured right now. It's going to be hard. Dan, anybody on the list that you've kept up with that you think might be on someone's typical an average waiver wire, or someone on our waiver wire that you think might be someone to look at?
Yeah, a couple guys that I just picked up, they're owned in less than 20% of leagues. Mike James, point guard for the Suns. They didn't, with the trade of Eric Bledsoe, they didn't really have that guy that they went to. He's become the de facto starter, and he's put up some pretty good numbers for being basically one of the guys on the end of my bench in our league where I can't drop him because he's doing so well. He's averaging 12 points a game, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 steal. So he's doing it all across, and he's getting the minutes. He's getting 25, 30 minutes a game. Another guy who's probably not going to be as good moving forward, but he's been a monster since I've picked him up, and that's Etuan Moore with the Pelicans. I talked
about him a few weeks ago. Yeah, man.
So Rondo's coming back, so his minutes are probably going to drop, but he was averaging 32 minutes a night. And just the scores that he's given me in the last few games, 40 points last night, 31 the game before that, 37 before that, 27, 26, 33. He's put up monster numbers for me.
He's the cleanup guy. I'm sure those numbers, the real stats, are just scattered everywhere. He's doing a little bit of everything.
Exactly. Yep. So he's only owned in 6% of leagues. Mike James is owned in 17%. And another guy that I've had for a while, and I just keep riding him, is Marco Bellinelli with the Hawks. He's their main 3-point shooter. He's getting you 13 points a game, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, 2 steals. So I mean, he's putting up monster numbers too. And he's only owned in 7.7% of ESPN leagues. So those are 3 guys basically under 17% of their owned in leagues, and they're putting up monster numbers for me in our scoring system. But likely, no matter what scoring system you have, they're guys that you can count on every night.
Yep, no doubt. So looking at our list, just some of the guys that are available. One of the guys that stuck out to me, just because I know he had a big game the other night, was I forgot just that quickly, but Kyle Korver. Sorry, guys, Kyle Korver. I think he hit like 5, 6, 7 threes the other night. You never know. He's had explosion games, so you could take a chance nightly on those guys we're talking about. Some of those guys you can just swap in and out every single night based on schedule, as long as you don't go over your acquisition limit. If you have an acquisition limit, so. But I think he's one of those guys, Kyle Korver. Tyler Johnson, like we mentioned before, he's out there right now. He's just one of those guys. Another guy that I'm interested in because I've been keeping up with this guy since high school. He went to high school in Memphis. There was a chance he was going to go to Memphis. He ended up going to Kentucky, played a year. Now he's with the Sacramento Kings at Skal Labissiere. He has decent games. If he gets minutes, he has decent games. So if you need a big man who can provide, some decent rebounds for you and some double-digit scoring, Skal Labissiere may be one to look at. Bojan Bogdanovic is out there. Malik Monk is out there. It's been kind of up and down. You never know with Malik. He could put up 35 for you, or he could put up 7 for you. You just don't know. Joe Harris with Brooklyn, shooting guard. I know D'Angelo Russell's been hurt right now. So if he's not playing, then Joe Harris may be a valuable asset, which he had 27 last night when D'Angelo was not playing. So there you go. So I would also recommend kind of look at, especially if you're playing daily fantasy, look at who's hurt and not playing, and look at their backups, or look at the next position. Who's going to get more minutes because another guy is hurt? Grizzlies playing tonight, guys, and JaMychal Green is coming back tonight. So he's a guy I played in fantasy, daily fantasy tonight, because his value was extremely low, I think like 4,700. And as long as he plays decent minutes, he's going to accumulate points, kind of like that what Eton Moore with what Dan was saying. He's going to be a little bit of everything, so pretty good value there. So but Patty Mills is available in our league. Dylan Brooks, I ended up dropping Dylan Brooks, held on to him for a while, but he's up and down. He'll give you 30 one night, but he's been steady. I think his lowest game that I see is 3, but he probably didn't play much. That was against Dallas. That was in a loss. So other than that, he hadn't had a game under 12 points since then, with a high of 31. So look at him. There's guys out there on a night-to-night basis. You just kind of got to look at the scenarios and see what's going to help your team. But there are guys out there. So that's a fun question. That's really a question we need to probably answer just about every week, because it's going to change so much from week to week, and who's based on who's hot, who may have got injured, and how much your league. It also really depends on how much the other guys, the other owners in your league are keeping up with everything. Because like I mentioned, I was shocked when I went 2 days after Bobby Portis's first game in the NBA this year, and he's already picked up by DDT. I was amazed, and Kyle Anderson too. I was just amazed. So our guys are keeping up. If your guys aren't keeping up as much, you could probably slip some ones in there. Next thing you know, you've built a pretty damn good roster just by picking up good guys that everyone else slept on. So appreciate the questions. That's Gilly Stevens. What we're going to do next is move on to the NFL and answer a whole lot of NFL mailbag questions, because the playoffs are creeping up. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. Appreciate you guys, all the question submitters. We got a whole lot in the NFL to talk about today, because the playoffs are creeping up on us. I'll probably not be a part of the playoffs this year, because I've been conspirized against in our league, and I probably won't be there. But
it doesn't matter anyways. We know who's going to win, so it's already settled, set in stone. So you're not missing anything, Brandon. Don't worry.
Oh, I understand. I understand what I did last year, and so this is it's a conspiracy. It's a collusion to keep the current champ out of it because you saw him do the same damn thing last year, and you feel this momentum. He made a hell of a trade, and guys are scared. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it now that Orlando's here. A big shakeup in the MyFantasySportsTalk.com fantasy league this week, and we'll get into that. So, conspiracy and collusion all around. But we'll talk about that later. But first, the legit mailbag questions from you guys that were submitted by you guys and what you want to know. So the first one comes from, I told you we get into Jared Goff, and so we'll do that right now. Talk a little Jared Goff from Adam Van Sears. Is Jared Goff for real in terms of trusting him week in and week out in fantasy, 20 to 30 points per week, do you think? I don't know. Damn, that's a gamble. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean he's got some tough matchups coming up. I think they play Minnesota this week, and they still have a couple other ones. The only reason I know is I actually did pick him up in one of my other leagues where I had Andrew Luck, Carson Palmer, Deshaun Watson. They all went on the wayside. So I had Eli Manning. I dropped him for Jared Goff, who was still available, and I'm happy. I'm going to go with him week in, week out, mainly because he's my only option left. Other than like a Josh McCown or some other thing, Eli Manning, obviously. So I'm going to trust him week in, week out. I don't think you can, with those tough matchups, like with Minnesota this week, I'd be happy with 15 to 20 points. He'll probably get you a touchdown every week, 2 to 250 at least, but he has those weeks where he's going to go off for, 3 to 4 scores, 300 yards. So, I would say, at this point, you rely on him. And it's not just Jared Goff you're relying on. It's Sean McVay, because he's the one that's really gotten Jared Goff to perform this way. He's kind of like that quarterback whisperer, because last year Jared Goff didn't even look like a Division I quarterback when he stepped foot with the Rams.
And can I say this, though, not to bash on Jared Goff or disrupt this question altogether, but if you watch some of their games, I particularly watched last week, but the touchdowns he's throwing are not really hard touchdowns. He's not having to make really, really difficult throws. It's just the scheme. The defense is wearing folks out. They got a really good running game with Todd Gurley. So a couple of these touchdowns he threw, you're talking about 14 yards over the middle or a little out pass to the back. And it's not difficult throws. It's not really difficult touchdowns he's doing. He's just working the system. But I applaud him for that. I really do, coming from where he came from last year.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's just as much Sean McVay is the one you're trusting as it is Jared Goff. So I would say, yeah, trust him, depending on your other options. But obviously, if you're asking that question, you probably don't have many other options, probably in a similar situation like I am. But, yeah, I'm going with him.
Orlando, how do you feel about Jared Goff week in and week out?
That's the thing. I think he's just one of those guys you pick up and you just plug in. I don't know if he's going to get you 30 every week, but this week you're probably banking on 15 to 20 points against the Vikings defense. But yeah, what he's been doing, the weapons he has, and basically what Dan said, like they're fixing the scheme to fit his tool set. He's not being asked to do a whole lot. So and it's working out. It's working out for them, and record-wise, it is too. So yeah, I would pick him up and start him.
I'm glad Dan mentioned the schedule, because that's exactly where I'm going, because I looked ahead at the schedule. It's not just the Vikings, guys. They have games out of 5 of their last 7 games are games against the Vikings, Cardinals, Eagles, Seahawks, and Titans coming up. Now, I know a lot of those do not strike you as great defenses. Some of them are, but they're solid defenses, I think. Defenses that are not pushover. But the other thing is that 5 of their last 7 games, 4 of those 5 are on the road. So they're not going to be real easy games, particularly that Vikings. And I think the Cardinals, look out for the Cardinals, the Eagles, Seahawks. Those are not going to be easy defenses to push over. So you have to be really careful and look at the schedule. I definitely would want to keep him on my roster because he is that valuable at this particular point in the season. So it just depends on what you have else, what your other options are from week to week. But I kind of agree with Dan. If you get 18 out of him this week, I would think a lot of them are probably garbage points at the very, very end, and I would settle for that against a team like the Vikings, or even further along down the road, the Seahawks, when they have to play in Seattle. So, but I've been surprised, man. I've been shocked and surprised about what he's been able to do this year, what the Rams have been able to do this year, just like that. It's like flip the switch. But you could do a lot worse. So he's probably viable to leave in there every single game from here on out. You're just going to face some tough defenses. So you might want to have that backup plan too, is what I would suggest, because it might be hard because you got to still think he is pretty young. He is still a rookie and facing some of and the weather conditions are about to get a little bit harsher too. Does that make a difference for the California boy, the golden boy? We'll see. But thanks for the question. That was Adam Van Sears. We'll move on. The next one's from James Post Jr. Need some Cowboys help. Who do I trust in that backfield with Zeke gone? Alfred Morris looked like straight shits on Sunday. Did he? Did he really? I don't know. I'm going to leave that for you guys. I'm going to let you guys touch on that. You're the Cowboys guys. James Post wants to know, who do you trust in that Cowboys backfield, Dan?
I don't trust any of them. In regards to fantasy purposes, I wouldn't say you must start Alfred Morris. I don't think he looked that bad, but in regards to fantasy, he did. I mean, he didn't really give you – he had 50-some-odd yards rushing, nothing else. So fantasy-wise, yeah, I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of open holes. Chaz Green, the left tackle, I could have blocked better than he did on Sunday, and I'm not even remotely close to joking. I could have thrown on pads. Orlando could have thrown on pads. Brandon would have vetoed the pads, and he would have just went right out there. And
are you talking about number 79?
I don't even know his number. He was
talking
on his
about
ass
79.
So much. That's all I know.
That's how bad it is. I know exactly. That's how bad it was because I know his number. I don't even know his name. I know his number, and that dude was getting blown
he's
up.
absolutely garbage. And so, I mean, that there was no running game because of that offensive line. So maybe you're going to see something different. But Rod Smith got a lot of playing time. I mean, especially when they went to the shotgun and passing situations, Rod Smith is going to be the guy. So in a PPR league, I would maybe lean towards Smith more than I would Morris. But I would still go Morris. Just to give you an idea, I have Morris in one of my leagues. I am not starting him this week. I have Kareem Hunt and Kenyon Drake, who I'm actually starting over Alfred Morris, just to give you an idea of where I kind of see his value in fantasy this week.
So let me go to the other Cowboys boy, Orlando. What do you think about that Cowboys backfield?
Yeah, basically the same. I'm going to lean towards Morris for right now. If you have to bench him, you're not going to feel good about starting him. The good thing is Sunday with the showdown against Philly, they're at home. They're probably going to lean towards a heavy run game again. So instead, I would favor Morris more. And I just don't think their game plan favored them in Atlanta. For the first half, Dallas played a pretty competitive game defensively as well. They won shot. Lee went out, and Chaz Green just letting Claiborne blow past them to record 8 sacks. It just kind of threw off the whole game, and I think that led to us seeing more of Rod Smith playing. Yeah, regardless, I don't think Rod Smith was a fluke. I don't think he's a must start, but just like Dan said in PPR, what he does that Morris doesn't do is cast passes out of the backfield. So I think that's where Rod Smith might be favored more in PPR rather than Morris. You'd rather stick to him in standard.
Well, I watched most of that game, guys. I was very intrigued by that game, but I guess I'm going to go a little bit different way than you guys slightly, and I'm not agreeing with James Post at all here. Alfred Morris did not look like garbage to me at all. He looked great. I'm actually thinking Dallas is one of those teams, like I've said, KC. It's just the system, man. Plug in the running back. Now, obviously, Ezekiel Elliott's got skill set that most guys just don't got. He is an elite tier running back, but Alfred Morris was busting through holes, looked agile. He looked great. 11 carries, 53 yards. That's an average of 4.8 yards. That's really, really good. The problem was just the flow of the game that happened with Alfred Morris last week is that they had to start passing and had to start getting a little bit more versatile with the run and started throwing to Rod Smith. So he got his action. But Alfred Morris did not look bad at all. If you
Yeah, but I mean, of those yards, I think one of them was a 28-yard run that he bursted. But besides that run, he was averaging about 1.9 yards per carry. He did not. He did not look that good.
So I'm going by the averages. Give him 20 touches, and he's probably approaching 80 to 100 yards. We'll see. But give him those touches. It's going to depend on game flow, though. But anyway, what I'm saying is Alfred Morris did not look like garbage. He was hitting the holes when they were there. He was, he was doing what he had to do. He looked really good for someone who really hasn't had much action lately. It didn't look rusty at all. He looked a hell of a lot better than Derek McFadden, who I think had maybe one carry for -2 yards. So if that's what you're thinking, I would go Alfred Morris way ahead of Darren McFadden, who didn't even get the opportunity to play without Zeke in the lineup. And I don't necessarily think Rod Smith is just going to be that guy. He provides that pass catching element, but if you want to pound it, if you want to resemble anything like your team looked with Ezekiel Elliott, Alfred Morris is going to be the guy. And I think he needs to get more than 11 touches, maybe a little bit more concentrated effort in the beginning. Just force feed him, man. Force feed him and see what he's got. Right now with Zeke being gone for sure now for the 6 games, then I would force feed Alfred Morris and just ride his back as much as I can while you can, and not to get you in a hole, but and ride him. This is pretty much probably the peak of his career age-wise and where he's going. So ride that horse, man, and see what you got and let it go. But I didn't think he looked bad at all. So I don't know, but I'm kind of with Dan. I'm not really sure I want any piece of that right now because Zeke was such an elite tier guy that without him, none of those guys really add up. And I think you will see a little bit more of a committee approach, but I'm surprised Darren McFadden didn't get a little bit more work than what he got. That's the surprising part, because if you would have asked me, 8 weeks ago, I would have said Darren McFadden. And actually, we may have even had that conversation because this suspension's been looming over Ezekiel Elliott forever now. So, but I don't know. I don't know if that helps you out much at all, James Post, but I don't really agree with you. Look like complete garbage, man. No. Get off my man, Alfred Morris, Big Freddie Morris. We'll see what he's got. Intriguing situation, but we'll see where the Cowboys go from here without Zeke. The next one comes from Stephen Lurdy. What defense would you guys go with this week? And he gives us some options here. Arizona versus Houston. It's at Houston. Or would you go Houston versus Arizona? Again, the game is at Houston. Would you go Baltimore, or would you go Green Bay versus Baltimore? That game is in Green Bay. Or would you go Chargers versus Buffalo? Don't really know. I don't know where that game is at, Dan. Do you know where that game is? Chargers Buffalo.
Chargers. It's in LA.
It's in LA. Okay, so Arizona versus Houston defense. Would you go Houston defense versus Arizona? Would you go Green Bay defense versus Baltimore? Or would you go Chargers defense versus Buffalo in sunny LA? Orlando, what you think, man? If you had to pick one of those defenses, which one looks the best?
I think I'm going to roll with Houston at home. I don't even know if Drew Stanton's going to play on Sunday. I know he's having some knee issues. So if he's not good to go, and the way it just has been going, Adrian Peterson's not, he has his games where he's getting fed, but he's not going to do that all the time for you. Andre Ellington's not going to do all that all the time for you either. And I'm just going to, with Drew Stanton being out and them possibly having to plug in another quarterback on Sunday, I'm going to roll with Houston at home.
Dan?
I would actually lean towards both of the home teams, either Green Bay or the Chargers. I would actually look towards the Chargers. You don't look at them statistically, but anytime you're playing a rookie quarterback in his first start on the road, I expect turnovers to happen. So I would kind of lean the Chargers, but I just like Green Bay just because Joe Flacco is inept at quarterback, and he seems to always throw more interceptions than touchdowns this season. So I would go either the Packers or Chargers. Put the final pick on that guy.
I like what Dan just said. I didn't even really think about the Buffalo element with Peterman being the rookie quarterback starting, and I like what he just said about Baltimore because Baltimore is not very good offensively in the NFL. But I'm going with Orlando, Houston over Arizona because Arizona is the 6th worst scoring offense in the NFL. And I think a lot of that was with Carson Palmer. So now they don't have David Johnson or Carson Palmer, and we obviously see that Adrian Peterson, that one game was a fluke. So in Houston, I know that team does not resemble anything like it should right now, but that team is just a team that should be playing with emotion right now, with a hurricane, with the World Series, with just the guys who have gone down, with J.J. Watt going down. It's totally next man up mentality for Houston right now. And I just think at home, inside Gillette, is it Gillette Stadium? Is that their home stadium? Indoors, it should be a loud environment, and they're still playing football. They're still technically not out of the AFC South race. I guess they better put it together really quickly, but at least in their minds, they're still going for that. So that's who I'm going with, Houston as well over Arizona, who's just not been getting it done offensively this year. But like Dan said, Baltimore's right there. Baltimore and Arizona are both of them are very inept offensively this year. I don't know if that helps you much at all, Stephen Lerdy. Those are not really great options. I would like to see the other options that you may have, but if you're having to go with one of those, we'll see. There's intriguing aspects to all of those picks. I think we're all agreeing that we probably wouldn't go Arizona versus Houston, though. I guess none of us mentioned that. So X them off the list, Stephen Lerdy. I appreciate the question. Let's move on. Next one is from Mike LaFollette. Sit or start? Standard scoring league. Alex Collins plays at Green Bay, or would you go Amir Abdullah at Chicago? Orlando?
I'm going to go ahead and start Alex Collins, and I'm going to sit Amir Abdullah. I just think Chicago's going to come out with a little bit of fire because I think that's a game that, in their mind at least, they should have won last week against Green Bay. The thing he's been like since week 5, he hasn't got less than 10 carries in a game. So he's getting fed. He's may not getting the touchdowns, but he's consistently in the game, and he's getting the carries he needs. So especially in standards, so I'm going to go ahead and roll out with Alex Collins.
Orlando? I'm sorry, Dan?
I'm going the opposite. I'm going Amir Abdullah. Alex Collins has gotten more touches recently, but if you look at Amir Abdullah's numbers, the consistency is there. 12 touches, 22 touches, 15 touches, 15 touches, 12 touches, 23 touches, 17 touches, 17 touches, 15 touches. He gets the ball every single week. He hasn't done a whole lot with it, but the last 2 weeks he's been able to score a touchdown. He's doing well on the ground. He averaged 5 yards a carry last game. So I just think he's more integral in the Lions offense. And if you're going to ask me who's more likely to score, the Lions or the Ravens, I'm going to tell you the Lions. So I would go Amir Abdullah.
So I looked at these two defenses, guys. When you're talking about the Packers and the Bears rush defenses, they're virtually identical. Their numbers are so similar. They are virtually identical. So that didn't help me out none. So you go to looking at, to me, I kind of look at who's got the more competition at running back. To me, that really is Alex Collins, I think. But it's not enough separation either way. You got Theo Riddick with Amir Abdullah. So I don't know. This is really tough. This is a split decision here. So what I did, guys, is I looked at the weather. What's the weather going to be like? Is it going to be more run-conducive environments in Green Bay, or is it going to be more run-conducive environments in Chicago? The weather is virtually the same. It's going to be cold as hell in both of these places on Sunday, 30 degrees, clear, no rain or snow or sleet in the forecast, but cold as hell, 30 degrees in the daytime. And it's supposed to have rained in both cities pretty heavily on both Friday and Saturday, so it could be a little wet. Answer this for me, Dan. You may know. Chicago, are they still natural grass, or do they go to turf?
I don't know.
I know Green Bay is natural grass. I know that for 100% sure. I wasn't sure about Soldier Field anymore. I think they are grass, but I wasn't 100% sure. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because it is supposed to rain, a fairly heavy chance of rain both Friday and Saturday in those cold conditions for a Sunday game. So I don't know. I didn't settle it at all, but I'm probably leaning to, if I just had to pick who I'm a little bit more high on, I'm probably a little bit more high on Amir Abdullah right now, but only slightly.
Just one thing that I didn't touch on. Danny Woodhead is probably coming back for the Ravens, so that might eat into Alex Collins even more. Although two different backs. Alex Collins is the running back, the rushing type back. Danny Woodhead the receiving, but Woodhead was an integral part of that offense before he got hurt in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be throughout the whole season. And like you said, they haven't been really, they've been pretty inept offensively. So maybe that was a huge chunk of it. We'll see. But that's a tough question, Mike. I don't know that we really helped you, but go for it. I mean, you couldn't have asked a more even question. That's totally split decision there. Both those guys. Let's move on. Let's answer the last NFL mailbag question before we get into the big debate topic of the day. Sean Leahy wants to know, trade Keenan Allen for Brandon Cooks straight up in a PPR league. Orlando, I know you're really high on Keenan Allen, or have been, until he gets hurt for you. So you tell me.
Yeah. No, I was, but no, I'm not doing this straight up. No, I'm not doing this straight. I'm going to go ahead and ride with Cooks. I know he's not getting the touchdowns, but he's getting the production. And I guess you could say the same thing about Keenan Allen, but Cooks' numbers have just been a little bit there, and I don't even know. Does Keenan Allen have a touchdown this season? I think he may have one. And Cooks doesn't have that very much either. He probably has 3 or 4. But now you hang on tight to Cooks. And unless you're trying to get Cooks, was that the question worded?
No, I'm thinking that Sean has Keenan Allen, and he is thinking about trading him for Brandon Cooks. It's kind of the way I read the question. It says trade Keenan Allen for Brandon Cooks straight up. PPR. So I'm thinking, yeah.
If the guy's accepting that trade, then yeah, I doubt whoever he's trying to get Cooks from is going to accept that straight up. But if you could do that without getting vetoed, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, unless the other guy was the one offering it. We just don't know that, but it appears to me that Sean has Keenan Allen, and he's asking to trade him for Brandon Cooks straight up. Dan, how did you interpret the question, and what do you think?
Yeah, I think he has Allen trading it for Cooks. I would go Cooks. I'm an owner of Allen in a league. He gets decent catches, but like Orlando said, he doesn't really find the end zone too much. And it basically comes down to, who do I trust more, Phillip Rivers or Tom Brady? I'm going to go with Tom Brady. So it's pretty simple there. Phillip Rivers is a poor man's Tony Romo. So Brandon Cooks.
You snuck Tony Romo into the podcast. Yay! I'm going with Cooks too to wrap that up, because I do believe, and I agree with Dan, that the 100% of the offense runs through Tom Brady when you're talking about New England, and Tom Brady is, I think, a superior quarterback to Phillip Rivers. Plus, Phillip Rivers and San Diego. Did I say San Diego? Where are they at now? They're in Los Angeles, right? That's so confusing. But anyway, they have the much better running back, a legit running back who is just obviously naturally going to eat into some of your snaps and some of your looks when you have a running back like Melvin Gordon there. So I'm going with Brandon Cooks. The whole offense runs through Tom Brady. And when Gronk goes down again, then he is going to get even more looks.
Neither of them are getting hurt. It's just not going to happen.
I read a stat today that Tom Brady has a quarterback rating of 110 when targeting Brandon Cooks. The only other combination higher in the NFL than that is Brady to Gronk. So Gronk will get hurt again. And anyway, even if he doesn't, I like that Brandon Cooks combination. I'm going with Brandon Cooks for sure. So whether you have Keenan Allen and you have an opportunity to trade him for Brandon Cooks, I would do it. Or if you have Brandon Cooks, hang on to him. Do not trade him for Keenan Allen. I think we all agree on that. So thanks for the questions, guys. The college questions, the NBA questions, the NFL questions. I want you to hang around because next I'm going to give you a trade scenario that was proposed in our fantasy football league just yesterday, and it caused quite a bit of controversy. It was ultimately vetoed, and the reasoning was a little bit suspicious. So let's get into that next. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to and watching My Fantasy Podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. Thanks, guys. Almost the end of the show. Thanks for all the questions. It's been a lot of just a merry-go-round of questions, and we've enjoyed it. Orlando Torres is here, Dan Schalk is here, and I am Brandon Reed. So, a trade was proposed to me yesterday from Thomas Take, Ryan Thomas of the Thomas Take podcast. Been on the show several times. And he proposed this trade to me. He was going to send me Tom Brady, Leonard Fournette, Corey Davis, and Mike Wallace. And I was giving up Isaiah Crowell, Matt Ryan, Alshon Jeffrey, and Greg Olsen. Now, here is the way our league works. That's, what is it, Dan? Must be 4 veto votes to veto a trade.
Yes, I believe so. Yep, 4.
So 4 veto votes to veto a trade. Some of the reasoning I got, I won't even say one on the air, but it was really not a fairness issue. It was just more of a teaching a lesson issue. Okay, so not even fantasy football related. The other one, veto, I know for sure that I got is because they said that this was an unfair trade. I have no comprehension of looking at this and analyzing these numbers and saying this was an unfair trade. I don't know how you get that. I've seen so many ridiculous trades that have been either proposed or gone through that this one ain't even on the radar. This is a look at it. Okay, submit. Okay, good. Process the trade. So this really brings up a bigger issue, though, of should other owners in your league have any kind of veto power? Because let's be honest about it, they're not looking at it to see if trades are fair or not. They're looking at, well, how does this hurt or help my chances? Does this make a mega team? And let me tell you something else I think is very suspicious, Dan. I'm not even sure you realized this yesterday. Do you know the guys that I know for sure vetoed this trade happen to be the 2 guys ahead of me in the standings in my division? Very suspicious. Very, very suspicious, because I'm coming, and I did the same thing last year. So I'm 4-6 with 3 weeks left to play. This trade would have made my team better for sure. No doubt about that. Thomas Tate thinks that the trade would have made his team better and more balanced too. I have no issue with that. My problem was this trade is not unfair. But I have a big problem with other guys vetoing a trade for one reason or another, regardless of the reason, whether you don't like one person or the other, or you think that it may hurt your chances of making the playoffs. It's none of your business. You have no say-so in vetoing trades, and that's where you, as the commissioner, have failed me.
Well, let me just start by saying this. The only reason that voting veto from the league members is in place is because of an issue with you last year with me having veto power. So that's the only reason why I implemented the league voting, is because of the trade scenario last season where I accidentally hit a button and vetoed one of your trades. So I didn't want to have that scenario again. So that's why it's in place, if you're wondering.
Oh, so accidents, yeah, I'm gonna have a major problem with you if you tell me an accident is the reason I don't have someone on my team. That's not the issue. But we can't involve, if I beg you, because my season is over, Dan. This trade gave me hope. It gave me hope. Now I don't care. It's done. It is completely done. And you know what? I'm 4-6. In the next 3 weeks, I play other 4-6 guys. I had a straight up legit shot of doing this. But the 2 guys ahead of me in the standings veto the trade for one reason or another. It ain't right. It ain't right. I know Orlando feels the same way. Orlando, you chime in.
Yeah, no, I understand. I feel your disappointment. I'm not gonna go as far as say that Dan has failed me as a commissioner, although I totally get where you're coming from. But I'm totally with you. Honestly, what I said in the group yesterday. I don't agree with vetoes. That's just me. Everybody has a different mindset towards it, so I respect that as well. But I honestly feel between 2 owners, if there's a trade that they feel benefits their team, the rest of the season, by all means, go for it. If it's not hurting anybody else. I think what bothered me a little bit yesterday, with the trade, is one of the guys who was complaining. I'm not gonna say names or nothing. We've been writing each other. We're pretty cool. But one of the guys who vetoed the trade and was against it, literally got Mike Evans for Lamar Miller straight up. When you want to talk about unfair trades, I mean, come on. You got a legit wide receiver 1 for what? Wide receiver 3, high-end running back 2, but you want to veto this trade? That's what I didn't get. So, in a way, I'm totally with you, New Reeds there. I think it was completely unfair. I did not veto it. Just the fact that Ryan said, hey, it makes my team more balanced. The fact that he's up for it, just let it stand. I don't know why it had to
But
be
you
vetoed.
analyzed the trade, Orlando. You tell me, you saw the trade. Was that unfair in any way? I mean, okay,
It definitely favors you. It
by
favors
how
you, but I
much?
don't
By
think it
how
was
much?
overly.
Because you got to think, Ryan Thomas is a playoff
I-
team right now, and Greg Olson. That's what people I think are underestimating right now. He's a top 3 tight end. I took him like in the 5th or 6th round, and he's coming back in 2 weeks. So,
But when he was
here's
healthy, he wasn't that good. He only in
2
the
weeks.
Yeah, but he did terrible. He wasn't part of the offense. He wasn't really looked at.
That was Carolina. But here's
Or he
another
could be
thing.
washed up.
I think a lot of you are just looking at Tom Brady and saying, oh my God, Tom Brady for Matt Ryan. Have you looked at Tom Brady's numbers in the last 5 weeks? A 14, a 15, a 16, and a 17-point game. It wasn't that far out of whack. But regardless, if both guys agree that it's helping their teams, I mean, I gave up Mike Evans for Lamar Miller because I desperately needed a running back. With these 2 trades that I made, my team was a lot stouter than it was 4 weeks ago. And I had a legit shot. Now I don't. So I want to know what Dan is going to do to rectify this situation. I think you owe me Todd Gurley.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just say this. I did not think with me as the commissioner, I didn't think the guys were going to veto it. I mean, we were going on in our message boards all day, kind of making a joke because, I mean, it is, I wouldn't go as far to say unfair, but it 100% makes your team better, Brandon, and it does not make Ryan's team better by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know why he thinks that. I wanted this trade to go through for the fact that I think Thomas Take's team would not even make the playoffs if he made this move. He would lose out. He still might.
But
he's that bad of an
isn't
owner,
it suspicious, though, that the only guys chiming in of the whole 14-team league are the 2 guys ahead of me in the standings?
Yeah, but here's the other question. Where do the other 2 votes come from? I'm a little suspicious of our boy Thomas Take. I would not be surprised if he was one of those votes. So I think you got to look at it that way, too. It's who are those other 2 votes? Because I trust everybody that says it wasn't them, and I trust myself because it wasn't me. I didn't think it was going to get vetoed because I didn't think that you were going to get the votes. That's why I didn't push it through. As the commissioner, I didn't know. Like, I would have pushed it through if ultimately I thought it was going to get vetoed, but I didn't want to push it through with people vetoing against it. It's kind of like, as the commissioner, I have to play both sides a little bit, and I can't piss one off and not the other. And I just did not think they were going to screw our man New Breeds out. So, I mean,
I would just say this. I mean, at the end of the day, you're a commissioner, but just the fact that I've seen those 2 guys, go against it for wrong reasons. One of them wanted Ryan to prove a point. The other one didn't like the trade for, whatever reasons they were. At that point, I kind of would have put my foot down. I understand why they're against it, but they're just going in for the wrong reasons, basically to benefit themselves than Brandon, which I don't think is totally fair. When Brandon's not bending the rules, he's just making his team better. And I guess maybe another thing, going forward next season, we could either get rid of the veto system, we could have a vote within our league about that, or maybe raise the number of vetoes or something. Because for a 14-man league, only 4 vetoes is pretty low. I think if it was higher than that, I think the trade would have gone through with no problems. Honestly, I don't think that many people had a problem with the trade going through.
Well,
yeah. So go ahead. I'll let you talk.
What I was going to say is I'll take the loss this year, but I'm done with this league this year, guys. I'm done because all the momentum has been zapped out of me due to this. Because
why don't we do like a Harriet Tubman, and we'll sneak around midnight. You propose that trade again to Ryan Thomas, have him accept it, and I will push it through immediately.
Full confidentiality. I have accepted it. We repackaged it, and Thomas Take has not accepted it.
I hope he listens to this show because I know he was one of those 4 vetoes. I know. I just have this feeling. And listen, when you're last year's champ in fantasy basketball, you're going to be the future champ this year. You were 2nd place last year. You just know. And I think he was one of those vetoes. And so you can get mad at the commish, but get mad at the idiot who proposed you that trade and then backed out after it was already accepted.
So I don't know. I'll take the loss this year of this fantasy football team as long as it means a rule change for next year. And I want to hear from you guys too, because I know you guys have been in this situation. I've been commissioner of leagues too, and it's hard. It's hard. It's a juggling act, like Dan said. You're going to piss off somebody, but When it comes to trades, I think it's pretty obvious when there might be collusion. If forget an unbalanced trade, if it's week 4 and you see an unbalanced trade, so what? Let it go through. That's between them two. That's ridiculous. Now, if you're getting later into the season and you obviously see a trade that's a talent dump and another team is forming a mega team heading into the playoffs, then that's something totally different. Then I say veto that because there's something suspicious going on there. But otherwise, it should be up to the commissioner. Just pass the trades through. Just do it. It shouldn't be up to the league. That's what I'm saying. You got to take the opinions of the other owners out of it completely. You just can't have it. You just can't have it because you'll see what's happened. And I think it was very suspicious that I know for sure 2 guys ahead of me, barely ahead of me in the standings, vetoed my trade that made me better, and I was coming for you. So that's just, it's unfair.
I think you need to call Thomas Takeout on not accepting that trade. Get him to accept it, and I will push it through. Let's make it happen.
We'll see what happens.
Great again.
We'll see what happens. But one of the parties involved was Corey Davis, who plays tomorrow night. So I don't know how quickly we can get this done. We'll see. I think Ryan was on the fence about the trade anyway, but he accepted it. It went through. And
public shame him until he accepts.
Yeah. We repackaged it, and at this point, I would probably take it if I was him because I gave him a slightly better deal. But we'll see what happens. But the whole moral of this story, this whole debate, this whole controversy started with and ends with you cannot have other owners involved. You can't have third-party owners involved in trade scenarios for your league because it has nothing to do with them. I mean, just imagine if that happened in real life. And Malachi brought up the Chris Paul situation in the NBA, a couple years ago, and that was wrong too. But you cannot have that. You just cannot have that. Complete anarchy in the league, and I'm sick of it. So I'll see you guys in 2018. Believe that. Right after I win my first basketball championship. So. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the new listeners and watchers for the last couple of weeks. This week, thanks to Orlando Torres for jumping in here and straightening Dan out. Thanks to our man, our president, editor-in-chief, CEO, Dan the Man Chalk. Keep the questions coming. Check out the site. So much going on right now. College basketball at the yin yang, but Deadpool is back. Dan, did you watch that Deadpool trailer on the website? That was hilarious.
I did not. Nope.
You need to watch it.
I didn't even watch the first Deadpool movie.
I haven't either, but this trailer is hilarious because you know who Bob Ross is, right?
Yes.
Okay, watch this trailer. This is hilarious. Anyway, the entertainment section's back. Flash articles, Deadpool 2 trailer, and all the college basketball you can handle, plus all the fantasy football you can handle. Check out our Pick'em segment each and every week. Check out Orlando's Man Up, Step Aside pieces every single week. My Fantasy podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. For Orlando Torres and Dan Chalk, I am Brandon Reed, a very frustrated Brandon Reed about this MFST Fantasy Football League, calling collusion and calling it a good night. See you next week, folks. Later. Peace.